So looking at our material tab, you can see that at the very top we have a description which holds a combo box filled with the database of commonly used materials that you might see on your conveyor. If we click the down arrow, we can see there's a large number of these, and what we've added here is simply what we believe are the common materials used in conveyor design. However, if you find something that isn't here, you can also manually input it by selecting that first combo box and typing it in however you like it. In our case, in this conveyor, we are going to say that we have gravel as our material. So I'll scroll down until I find gravel, and I'll say it's bank run gravel. And when we do that, it updates our material density to 100 and surcharge angle to 19 degrees, which will also define the cross-sectional area just to the right of the material on top of the idlers at our given load of 800 standard tons per hour. So now that we have our material set up, let's go ahead and set up our geometry. So let's click on the next tab called Flights. And what we have in here initially, after creating this new file, is just the defaults from the template that we loaded up, a horizontal conveyor with a head drive and a head take-up. Here is where you would look at your existing geometry of your conveyor and make and input it into this flights spreadsheet as is needed. For our current conveyor, we're going to say it has the simple geometry of 200 feet of flat into 400 feet of 6 degree vertical angle lift, and then another 200 degrees of flat before it reaches the head pulley. So how would we input that? Well, we'll first put in our first section, say it's 200 feet at 0 lift, and you can input either lift or angle as 0, and it'll be one calculated off of the other. The next flight is going to be 200 feet of 6 degree angle, and you'll notice when I put in the angle there, it calculates out the lift of 21 feet. We're going to do the same thing for another 200 feet of 6 degree angle, since I said there will be 400 feet of 6 degrees. And then our final piece is going to be 200 feet of flat again. Now, if I didn't have enough flights there, you'll notice I had exactly 4 flights, 1, 2, 3, 4 of carry. If I needed more than just that or less than just that, you can actually select to add a flight or delete a flight as needed. So just to show you how to do this, if I needed a 5th flight, I'm going to click at flight number 5 and add it at the end and say, click on the Insert Flight button, which is just above on the top of the tab here. And I click on Insert Flight. It adds a default 5-foot section with its inputs, and you can adjust these inputs as needed. Say if you wanted another 100 feet, at 100 feet at 0 lift, you can do that. In our case, we know that that's not what we need, so I'm going to delete this flight again. So to delete this flight, I click on the flight, so flight number 5, and I go up to the button up here and it says delete, click on delete, and it removes it. You'll also notice that for every flight I have on the carry side, my flights 1 through 4, if my flights mode up at the top is in standard profile, right here, then the return side will be matched up exactly. So I have minus 200 feet at 0, minus 200 feet at minus 6, minus 200 feet at minus 6, and then minus 100 or minus 200 is the last flight. And it's just as you go around the belt, you can even follow it on the profile. 200 feet of flat on the carry side, 200 feet of 6 degrees, 200 feet of flat, goes around a head pulley, and then you return on your return side. One other thing I will note here, in this current conveyor, we're going to say that the take-up is located at the tail pulley, not just beyond the drive, and so I need to move my take-up. To do that, I click on the thing I need to move, in this case the take-up. So I click on flight number 7, it highlights the take-up, and then I go to the button up above that says Move. That's the one I want to move. So I click on Move. And then the button changes the text to move to. I need to click on the flight where I want my take-up to exist now. And I know it wants to be at the tail pulley. My tail pulley is actually the same thing as my take-up pulley. So I'm going to click on the tail pulley. Once I do that, it combines the two. It says tail/take-up, and I have officially moved my take-up. One thing I would also want to check is, do I have my pulleys set up properly? I'm going to say that typically you won't have two pulleys right next to each other that are just labeled bend pulleys. Bend pulleys in our program are just pulleys that bend the belt, so most pulleys are bend pulleys. I'm going to say that one of those needs to disappear, so I clicked on it in Flight 7, hit delete, which will delete it, and says, are you sure you want to delete the pulley? I'm going to say yes. And so I have a drive, I have a bend pulley, which will function as a snub pulley in my case, so I'm going to label it SNUB, and then I have my tail take-up. So that's set up properly. One thing I also would like to check when setting things up is the idler spacing and the load. You'll see here I have idler spacing on the carry side set to 4 for all flights, and idler spacing set to 12 on the return flights for all flights. Now I can change the spacing for each flight individually. So the first 200 feet, as an example, can be 5 feet, and the rest be 4. Or likewise, I can change all of them at once. I am going to say in this case I have 5 foot along the entire carry side, and so I'm going to select each one and type in 5, and then on my return side I have 10 feet. Another way of doing this, I'm not going to change this manually, I'm going to go to the quick way of doing it and go to the edit menu, and then there's a menu item called idler spacing. Click on idler spacing, and it says you can select all carry or all returns. For our case, I want to change all returns, which pops up this dialog box, and I want them to all be 10 feet into the new idler spacing. So 10, and click OK. And now my return side is all set to be. You'll notice here also that the spreadsheet showing all the flights tab actually has a scroll bar on the bottom that I can scroll over left and right, and there will be more columns to edit as needed. If I wanted to view this in a way that I could see the entire spreadsheet all at once, I can go up to the top and click on this expand folder button, which also is labeled as F8 as a hotkey. When I click on that, it expands my tab to cover the whole screen, and now I can see all the columns at once, which reveals to us that we also have inputs for skirting, cleaners and plows, and the ways we can edit these are, if I have skirting on the first flight of 20 feet long, I can input 20, maybe it's 15 feet, I can input 15 feet and hit enter, and it'll update my geometry. Also, we have inputs for cleaners and plows. If I have one cleaner at the head pulley, or just beyond the head pulley itself, I can put one there, and then one cleaner just beyond the bend pulley. Say I actually have 2, I can input 2 here, and then I can have a plow into just beyond the tail, or just before we reach the tail. We also have these columns here for extra drag and concentrated weight, which allow us to add extra frictions and extra weights for inertia calculations if we need it. So I'm going to say that we have set this up, so that's the flights tab. I'll contract that folder and get it back to the normal view, and let's move on to the belts tab.